Hey, Maddie, what are we talking about today?
Hi, Michelle. Today is a big one. I am going to be going in depth, month by month, starting right basically now and really starting in June on how I actually work with students to apply to 2025 schools, the hardest schools in the country, and get them in. We'll go over every single step we do month by month that allows us to get an incredible amount of work done in a pretty short period and have it all be at a high level. Ready?
Ready to go.
All right. Okay, so last episode, I mentioned we were talking about our students apply to 2025 schools, and I was saying I was going to explain how we get that done. Like what
Mhm.
is the process? And I was really struggling putting that outline together because I realized that itself is at the end usually of a much longer outline. Is like the 2025. That is the final push after 5 months of stuff we have done, and which is
Right.
why it kind of made me realize that sh- that episode is coming, I suppose. But before I can really introduce that, I need to explain how we get there because it's like a lot of stuff happens
That's
before then.
true.
That's what set me back on a new path. That today I have basically today's the introduction of a mini series, I guess, that I will be doing that come out every other week. The episodes I tend to focus on that go in depth, basically month by month over the next, well, really starting 6 months, starting in the middle of June, how how to get into college, and like I have my
Mhm.
first line here is applying to college is a skill in of itself. That is something I have found about this process, and why I think you and I as consultants, a lot of value we add is that yes, there's a lot of different aspects of this application, like writing ability, and writing ability really helps. Like organization, like all the things you might need, but just like raw doing it, like actually applying to schools with students, like that itself is an adventure. And because things don't change that much, doing it over and over and over again is going to lead to like inherently like knowing how to do it better. I guess
Right.
part of I don't just do it once every year. I do it usually 10 to 12 times with 12 different students. And the only way to guarantee that all 12 students are going to have everything in on time is to have built a strategy, is to have built a hard timeline that makes sure like allows for this all to happen. So that was like the early part of my career. Is the first year was chaos. I know, yeah, first 2 years were chaos because I was just hoping everything would work out. And quickly, if only for a while, and we did an episode several months ago about like the importance of a timeline stuff, like to reduce stress in a college
Yeah.
application season. Yeah, like I guess it was to reduce stress. It was also so that I could, like not have to refund my clients because I blew it. So that's what this is. And I basically consider this a rough overview. I tried hard not to do too much like the explanation of like what we do or like how we do it. I think is these will all be their own individual episodes, kind of each month. It's more about like the why and then like a
Mhm.
brief overview of like what we're doing. So I put January to June, which is where we're filming this. I said not too much, like preliminary
Right.
school stuff. So it's, and this is basically a combination of what we are doing, we are doing with students, and also what students can be doing for themselves. I guess it's like there's a lot of
Mhm.
overlap because so it's basically starting to build a school list, starting to visit schools. Although you don't have to lock anything in. This is often when letter of recommendation stuff comes in, where
Right.
you're doing your brag sheets, you're finding teachers. Yeah, like this is basically your spring semester junior year. Like that's something you should be doing. The big one is making sure you're keeping your grades up and your extracurriculars are going strong through junior
Yeah.
year. And it's really nice if you can get your SAT or ACT stuff done by the time you are entering the summer of your between your junior and senior year. Like that's probably the big one
Okay.
is and you don't have to. I definitely have students that are still trying to take the SAT in the summer or even later, but that's probably the best one. If you can have the score you're looking for, that'll really simplify everything else because you don't have to worry about it.
Mhm.
Yeah, like a lot of students now will be thinking like this is what I need to make my school list. Somewhere I differ, I think from most consultants is I'll get to the school list stuff in November, but it's very I that isn't what I am doing. Like students often want me to have like help with the school list. I don't see the point because you don't these aren't due till January 1st. So who cares where you're applying yet? If you want to really be proactive, if you could figure out what your early school is, your early decision slash restrictive early action school, that's generally going to be helpful. But even that, but yes, you can start doing your research on schools in general. Getting ready
Mhm.
for the process. And I keep this pretty lackadaisical and chill because, well, now we're going to hit the end of junior year, August 1st, the University of California PIQ response essays.
Yeah.
So things are chill until I'm starting this year. I guess you're starting a week after, but we are starting with students on June 12th of this year. Like that is the start of
Mhm.
essay season. And it really is a big day for me because that is when I really start working as a college consultant. It was like checking stuff or whatever, and that is when like it's go time. Like from basically,
Right.
and you want to simplify it, basically the day I believe the college application season should begin essentially the day a student finishes their junior year of high school. Like the second you hit summer, that is when it is now time to apply to college. That's the day. And
Mhm.
I like there being a clear timeline because if you don't get started on it, well, it's really easy to just not ignore it because nothing's actually due until November 1st. And
Right.
that's part of why this timeline is so important is if you just ignore it, nothing there's no actual punishment until you get to the middle of October and things are on fire.
Yep.
So I set hard dates and I hope people listen to this like understand that they're hard for me. Like that is when we go. So for me it's June 12th because that's when most students are out. That's the it's the second Tuesday. I start work on Tuesdays. If you really want to start on June 12th, like follow along at home, go for it. But okay, so what we start with though is a bit strange. This is probably the biggest difference of me and other consultants, I think. I do not start with the personal statement or the common application. I start with the UC
Mhm.
application. And the why is there's a couple of reasons why. The first one is that the UC application is available on June 12th, whereas most school supplements for your schools they come out closer to like August 1st.
Ah, okay.
So you're gonna like you don't even know what they want yet. A lot of people tend to begin with their personal statement, which I
Mhm.
understand, and that's what I did my first year. That is a I don't recommend that, and I think by explaining why I do the PIQs first, it'll make sense. So, well, the problem with the personal statement is the joke I always make is, "What's the most important story about your life, and also how it needs to get you into college? Go." Yeah, like it's my job to help students find these ideas and build these stories. I tried that my first year, and it was kind of a mess. It was basically like 50% hit rate. You know, like 50% we found it, and 50% we didn't, and the
Mhm.
didn'ts we kind of had to fluster. Then we get to the UC application, and like we're doing more content, and I'm like finding these cool ideas. And like my first year, I was like, next year I'm gonna start with the UC essay, see how it goes, and it was night and day. So, but I start with UC. A brief overview: the UC application is a bit different than the Common App. They offer you 8 topics, and you pick 4 of them, each one requiring a 350 word response. So what's special about the UCs is that they want like straightforward, like you're answering a job interview, straightforward answers. So they don't want it to be all codey and
Right.
flowery, and they want each answer to be about a very different aspect of your life, so not a lot of overlap between them. Those and really important, like the 8 questions are all the same, and I've memorized them and know every tiny angle to take all of them. Those factors together are why I like starting with them because it is a much lower stress version of instead of asking like a personal statement, big 650 words, like okay, like what's your greatest talent or skill? Like all right, cool, you're really good at hopscotch. Great, let's write about that. And it's intentionally meant to be less stressful. I'll note here that we start with the UC PIQs. Like these are due on November 30th, so like there's lots of
Mhm.
time. That is basically it's how I get working with students, how we get creating content. A note about my system is that it is efficient, almost like it's very efficient. That I don't spend a lot of time or energy just like pontificating about things or theory crafting or coming up with ideas. Instead, is like we create content because
Right.
that's my background. I'm a professional writer, and there is not a lot of time or energy for like, well, what do I want to do? You know, like what does this mean about me? No, it's like there's a deadline, and I go, okay, how do I need to get this done? How do I build that? So it's
Yeah.
the end of junior year to August 1st. So it's about 6 to 8 weeks, and the process is we basically find a topic. We choose one. Again, this is I'm gonna try not to fall into how you do it because that's for like the next episode I do will be about the UCPIQs, in depth. But our goal is to basically come up with 4 solid topics about 4 different aspects. Usually, almost one of them is always about their academic interest related to their major. That one you help with. The other 3 is some combination of academic interest and non-academic interest.
Mhm.
Generally, we are like sloppy is the wrong term, but the goal is not to have a fully finished, polished 350 word done essay. It is instead to come up with like honestly, like 3 to 6 different drafts of cool ideas that the
Yeah.
student then writes, and it can be seen in the writing that this is a good topic. And generally, when I'm helping students with the outline, I could usually tell if a story, like if an essay is going to be a winner or not, but it's only until they write it and bring it back, and then even after I edit it, that I really can tell, like, oh yeah, this is awesome, or like,
Mhm.
well, this was not that good, this won't make it, but that's okay. Let's try again. I'll be nicer about that version. But that is the goal. So I say students like almost never will these essays at this point actually be 350 words. They'll all be 412 or 260, like whatever, like usually longer. I'll clean up the
Right.
typos or whatever, but the writing will not be perfect or polished. I'm not going for that. Instead, I am more combination of just trying to get content on the board. Also learn about my students' lives and everything, but have ideas. Like that's really what it is, and know those ideas actually work when put on paper. So that's the goal to get to usually by August 1st. Like the goals usually have like 3, 4, even more like 5 or 6 different drafts of different topics for different UC essays. And that leads us to August 1st, which is when we transfer into the Common App personal statement. The line I put is, "This part is hell." That was my first note here. Okay, so now we have all this UC content. The real goal of that UC content, it's gonna come back, like, we're gonna use it, but, like, the number one goal is for me, honestly, but with the students' help, to be able to come up with a personal statement topic, and that is probably the hardest, if not most it is the hardest part of my job, and I think it's one of the hardest and most important aspects of the whole application. Like, writing the personal statement is one thing, but knowing what to write about, and that's why we spend 6, 7, 8 weeks basically coming up with ideas.
Mhm.
The 2 most common way I'm just okay, there's only 3 ways the topic comes up. One is that there's a UC topic that just rules. I remember last year, a girl
Yeah.
just wrote about how much she likes reading, and
Oh, yeah.
students won't understand or believe me, but when there's a UC topic that I know is gonna work, I get so excited, like, I'm,
You could just
jumping up and
tell.
down. Well, and I tell them that over and I was like, "This is huge. This is huge. Like, we're gonna do it. We got it.
Wow,
We got it.
yeah.
We got it." And they're like, "Okay, okay." I'm like, "No, you don't understand. Like, we jump the gap, like, on a skateboard. It's awesome." Oh, it's like every year I get 1 or 2 of those. More common is that through doing these different essay topics, there will be multiple different UC essays about like kind of specific topics, but I will slash we will be able to kind of theory craft like, well, you say here that this essay is about you being really considerate, and this essay is about you being really into fine dining, right?
Mhm.
So often the game I wrote a piece called Half Ideas that's linked on my website. It was like, okay, this is the impetus of it. It's like, okay, well, have you been really considerate while fine dining before?
Right,
and
right.
and they'll go, "Yeah," and I was like, Go ahead." And they're like, "Okay, well, I was in Maui," and I was like, "Okay." It's like, "Oh wow, so like you did help that waiter like learn a life lesson that day, didn't you, young man?" Like that is the hopscotch to get to an essay topic. And I would say that's the most common way it happens. And it's usually not as silly as like you said like A. Although sometimes it is. Sometimes that is how I ask the questions. Like you said A, you said B. Have you ever said A and B together? Yes, that so between that and me just getting a better vibe of the student and but like
Mhm.
and I will note that pretty much in all these cases, we completely redo the personal statement. Like I'll get to the UC topics are one thing, but I've found that you can't just like transfer over UC content. So
Right.
that one is probably the most common, and that's really what I'm trying to do. That's why I get so excited when I get cheat with the first one. We just write the essay topic and we just get
Yeah.
it. But like second one's more common, and like personal statement topics should be complicated. They should be in depth, and that's why combining multiple interests or stories is usually the best way to get there.
Mhm.
Then there's the third option, which is that doesn't quite work, which is every student is going to be a couple that year. That's a combination. We may just go back and do more UC essays while I just try to keep thinking about it.
Oh, yes.
Or well, we enter kind of the doldrums, which I guess I'll get to when I talk about the personal statement, but that can happen as well. And you just got to claw your way out of it. I don't really, yeah. The 1 and 2 are the fun ones, is what I could say. And
Yeah.
that is like 80. But that I hope people listening to this will at least understand, will at least pick up like that does seem easier than me just sitting there with a blank Microsoft Word or
Yeah,
Google
no
Doc trying to come up
kidding.
with this idea. Because and once you come up with the topic, well, you do already have an essay or multiple essays where you've already written about it. So that should be very helpful in knowing how to go about it again. And it should be a little bit better. I'll get to this in the actual like the personal statement presented within your the person presented in your personal statement should be the same person that writes the rest of the supplements. And that's going to sound insane just saying it here, but the personal statement is done now and it needs to be 100% complete. That's part of it. That's very
Mhm.
important. Whereas the UCs, we kind of willy nilly. My students and I work on the personal statement until it's 100% exactly the way we both want it, and that is because that personal statement is going on to become a tent pole for the rest of the application. And
Got
so,
it.
so I will say this is where I put my notes, like, don't get too in depth because I'll do a whole episode on it. But yeah, it's basically yeah, I'll get to the person. But that is the idea. And our goal with students is to be done with the personal statement by September 1st. Actually, it's by the start of football season. I won't lie. That is the actual due date for personal statements for me is NFL kickoff, whatever, usually the first Thursday in September. This is also I note here, you will be handling some of this stuff, like the stuff that you do. I always like, oh yeah, this happens too because Michelle's helping students with it. And
Right.
this is also around where like you can start figuring out which early school you want to apply to. But the big one
Yeah.
is it's also in September. You should begin work on the Y school, whatever your
Yes.
top schools are. You're applying to early. This is where you begin collecting information about them. And in the next few weeks, we'll be having you do a Mattie episode, if you will, where I'll ask you questions and you will explain how to do Y school stuff. Because the
Oh,
reality is,
man. Okay.
I don't really know. Like I've thought about that. I've never actually watched you do it with students, so I have no idea how you do it. But yeah, so if everything's on track, you it by here it's now early September. You have your personal statement 100% finished. as well as like a big chunk of UC stuff, some of which you've repurposed, some of it you
Mhm.
haven't. And this is the hill. If you can if you get to here, my experience is that things work out.
It's true.
August is the hardest month of my life. It is really brutal on me and students. Like it's hard to get this personal statement done. It is a grind. But getting to September, it always gets done. Everything from there, it gets easier.
Mhm.
So that, like,
Yeah.
that's important for
And
me.
getting through that first, research school too really
Yeah,
helps.
I imagine it does, but I'm in a I'm too busy being in a fugue state because
Yeah,
I have
that's
to start.
true.
Right, so we get to September, football starts, the Cowboys win a game, it's great. This is the beginning, this is the work on the top school, early school supplement. So that is going to be the early decision school or restricted early action school. Basically the number one school that students want to apply to. This is where the UC content is again very helpful because unlike the personal statement, I have found it is much easier and more effective to just like shamelessly steal from UC content. Usually the entire essay won't quite work, but you can take entire paragraphs, but really the ideas. So like, there's often
Mhm.
like a one-to-one transfer of, the UCs may have asked, talk about when you displayed leadership, whereas this one is like, talk about a great challenge you had. The difference will usually be that this one will be shorter. Like the Common App will ask for like 150 words, 200 words. So you're gonna have to like basically cut down, so let's rewrite the UC essay anyways. And often this is also where you need to like kind of Common Appify it, where they do want more literary analysis. They do want kind of a deeper pool. And this is why going in order when I explain how these all work is important because
Right.
it's now about like it's all about transferring information content over in a way that is like effective. Generally, you're going to end up writing new essays though. If even if they're about like the same topic, you're going to want to rewrite them just so that you can hit the word count. And also, by this point, you should probably be better at writing college essays, which helps. I found like the
Mhm.
quality of writing improves just because again, applying to college is a skill in itself. My policy is we basically go to whatever the longest essay is. So each school is going to have a different supplement amount, but generally there's going to be like one 350 to 500 word essay in your top schools, and then a series of shorter ones, or it'll be like three 250s and like 550s like Stanford. So it's like
Mhm.
different variants, but the way we do it is we basically pick the most word count, and then we do that one 100% to completion. And then we work backwards to the second longest or the third longest until we're usually finishing with the 100 or
Okay.
50 word short ones. And we just do that because we got to pick something. And it's mostly so that our best ideas or the best topics are being used in the longer essays where they're more effective. So because if you start with the shorter
Gotcha.
ones, it's you may very well like burn a good idea on a 50 word essay and then realize you'd rather use that for a 500 word essay. And it's just there's a reason we go longest to shortest because it's the most efficient way to
Okay.
do so. It's kind of redundant because this is also like Harvard or Yale, and you obviously want to go there. But
Yeah.
this content in particular, I am really making sure is of the highest possible quality, just like the personal statement, because while the personal statement is literally going to every school, these supplements in particular are going to become the other cornerstone of other application work going forward. And that includes the white school stuff that you're working on as well. Like this is where
Mhm.
you're actually cranking out the original content that will go into the remixing I mentioned in previous episodes that goes forward. So like really make it good. Even if you don't care that much about your early school, which does happen. I have students that apply restricted early action as like Stanford because they don't actually want to apply anywhere early. I totally get
Mm.
that. I am still absolutely grinding on this stuff, even if I no, that's not gonna it's not gonna get in because I know any typos or mistakes or like weak sentences or paragraphs in this essay, I will go insane as I continue to have to like re-edit them over and over and over again in future
Oh,
versions
yeah.
of this. And that was a mistake I made my first couple of years. I let like there'd be a typo or two, and then I was find myself editing the exact same typo like 13 times over the
Oh, no.
next two. Yeah, so that's why you want these to be perfect because they're going to be reused. Again, with you, this is where you begin research. Like research needs to be going on in the background. That's why I think
Mhm.
research should be a constant background item that you are now like you should have your research for the top school by the time you're writing it, the white school stuff. This is where you need to be figuring out the research for like your other schools. And if you want to just know, like I'll jump ahead, I tend to have students apply to schools in order of how much they want to go there. And that's often a good order of how to collect research as well, because that's how the actual writing I do with my students is. Yeah, this is also when you do work on your EC list and honor sections, another episode that you were going to handle because that's also different
Yeah.
background. But yeah, this is a good time to do it. That's what you do it around September, right? Like
Mhm.
mid late September.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
usually when we
Yeah,
start.
yeah. There's a little bit of time to edit it in October if there's anything else you add, but that's the basic idea. October, okay. Remaining early school supplements, and the best way I can describe October is I say it is when the rent becomes due, or like it's when the debt needs to be repaid.
Mhm.
And I've had I've had 6, 7 Octobers in my career, And about half of them have been surprisingly chill and everything's cool. And I'm watching football and feeling good about myself and a lot of happy Zoomers and not a lot of insane emails from parents. And the other half, I didn't get everything done in time for October, and it's been absolute hell on earth in some of the worst months of my life.
Mhm.
That is my guess of how it will work for students around the world. That October is when, if every like, if by October you have your EC list, your honors list, your personal statement, your all your top school supplements, and a bunch of UC crap that you still haven't like figured out what to do with, ready
Right.
to go. October's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's
You're in
not
a
that
good
bad.
space.
It's not that bad. If you don't have that, well, you're in a bad you're
Y
not in a good space, I
Yeah.
guess. But assuming everything has gone correctly, this leaves us about a month for everything else. And this might bleed into September a little bit, depending on how many early schools you want to apply to. Every student's a little bit different, but the most common culprits are state schools like Michigan, UVA, Purdue, UIUC, and then the two private schools that take early action are USC and
Mm.
MIT. So there's a lot of variance in which schools. All of our students apply to Michigan because it's yeah, like you need to do your own episode because you do Michigan with students. Like that's the idea. Is like, yeah, Michigan is like a cornerstone because it's kind of like the UCs of Y school because Michigan has like a very straightforward
Right.
550 word. And then UV, like a lot of the other state schools, they tend to copy from the Michigan. Yeah, USC and MIT are both pretty difficult, honestly. It's a good amount of work.
Mhm.
If you're applying ED, you most generally it's like you can't apply there if you're applying REA is the difference. So generally, any students applying early stage are also applying to USC and MIT. And for those students, I kind of have to squeeze those in generally by working harder with them in October. So like that's a good
Right.
warning. If you want to, like the state schools are what they are, and you should like just kind of if you get Michigan done, they kind of come together. But if you want to apply to USC and MIT, I recommend like moving this timeline up into September as well. Like everything needs to get pushed up because you're going to be those are both very difficult schools in their own regard. How we do that is we shamelessly reuse content from the top school supplement. That is very important.
Mhm.
This is where this is where I want to just like I get frustrated because you can't just reuse schools at this point, unfortunately. Yeah, like I'd say about half the content tends to be like half the content, more like 70% if you include the white school stuff, is basically recycled from work that's already been completed. The other 30, 40, 50% it needs to be done new. And
Right, right.
it should be a similar mindset to the early school that really do a good job on it because anything that is being done that is new, no, understand that you're just now going into a bank of content that becomes part of the rest of your application. Even
Yep.
if yeah, like a lot of students apply to USC and just because they kind of want to. And that's maybe why USC and MIT also really stress me out. It's not just the timeline. It's because when I'm doing them, I am still in this has to be excellent mode. Like this has to be the best
Yes.
possible work because I know that stuff's going to come back around very quickly. Same thing is I say begin with the schools you care most about and work backwards. I don't know that. Yeah, I guess that basically do Michigan, USC, and MIT because those are honestly the three early schools that people really tend to care about. UVA a little bit. Then when you're if and when you're stressed and rushed, it's probably better to have the hard schools that you care about completed to your best of your ability so that if you're inevitably rushing, UIUC can come in at the back end or Texas,
That's
like those.
true.
Yeah, like I'm not Georgia Tech, like there's it's not a coincidence that when things are doing 3 days, it's Texas I'm looking over and be like, this isn't very good. And they go, I know. Although that didn't happen last year because you helped. That was the biggest difference with you. That like the Texas was still good because you were working with them at the same time. So like that was cool. Okay, so last thing you do is your additional information. What we basically because that is generally by the end of your application, you should have a better idea of what that even needs to be.
Mhm.
Also, you're gonna want to go back in and look at your honors, extracurriculars one last time for anything to change or add. But goal is to have everything 100% ready to submit about a week before November 1st. That is the general goal we have with students, and
Right.
that is your personal statement, your top school supplements, all your other school supplements, honors, extracurriculars, additional information. Am I missing anything? I don't think so.
Oh, well, I guess sometimes like a video supplement, but
Ew, yeah, if you had to do a video from Brown.
I know.
And I say that gives you a week to actually finish the application is the punchline
Right.
here. Because exactly, something will always be due. There will always be
Yeah,
a little
something
thing.
always comes
And
up.
that's why having everything ready to go a week before allows for that. Then we get to November, Michelle. Then we get to November.
Whew.
I said you're building a college list. Yeah, now that we're in November, it's time to talk about your reaches, your matches, and your safeties. What's closer to the truth is I have basically ignored my students until this point. It is they made their own college list or ask you for help because I won't help them.
Mhm.
But take a breather. Like you make the October 31st deadline. Great work. Enjoy your Halloween. But and basically as a week off with students and for myself, we go over their college list and like a bonus little extra like a very special meeting. And what that usually is I look at their list that they've been bugging me about this whole time and tell them like, yeah, that makes sense. Like mostly I will generally add 3 or 4 schools that they won't ever end up going to, and I will ask them. I'll tell them we can't apply to U Chicago because it's too hard,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I used to try to weasel out of Caltech, but then I'm not gonna weasel out of Caltech because a student got in with by Hunter Own. They look like an
Right.
absolute moron. But yeah, mostly it's me being like, "Yeah, bro, that makes sense." Imagine all the time and energy I could have instead spent/wasted, like, discussing this list in the last 4 months. Like,
That's
and,
true.
it takes a long time, and it'd be like, "Well, do you wanna go to Purdue or Yale?" Like, I don't know. I just say, "Okay, bro, like, whatever, we'll do it." And generally their list is going to be like 25, 30 schools. And what I'll really do is I'll sort them into, I guess, 3 groups. One is like the most difficult schools, the ones I care most about, like we'll do together, like these are on the
Mhm.
list. Then the second list is these will get done, but understand that it's going to be almost entirely recycled information. So just like Duke is a purveyor of that. Like there's certain applications that I know either aren't very difficult or entirely consist of questions that you can recycle content from your other longer, harder schools for. So like Duke is there,
Right.
Dartmouth's in that group, Georgetown a little bit. But basically, yeah, like the top tier is generally going to be your Harvard, Stanford, Yale's of the world because those are the hardest applications and have the most work. Then there's a second tier, which we do, was like just hold on for those. Then there's a third group, which is you're free to apply to these schools. However, like you're basically gonna do these on your own. And that's often gonna be a lot more state options they have. Easier privates like a Tulane or anything like Emory is usually like kind of the end of the line. Like anything easier to get into than Emory. I'm usually gonna say like
Mhm.
just and they're fine with it. And then there's a fourth tier where I go, you really don't need to apply to these. Like these are too easy, or like you're not gonna go here. If you would like to do it on your own, I will maybe or maybe not look at them on the back end, but like it's like you don't need to apply to Haverford. You just don't.
Yeah.
Those schools, though, I do let them apply to, if only because those schools students tend to apply to in a giant bulk somewhere in November or December when they're having a bad day and worried they won't get in anywhere. When you're feeling that
Right.
way, go ahead and apply to like 8 schools in one day. You'll have the material for it, and just let me know you did, and I won't care. But I have it on authority that the students enjoy doing that and they feel better afterwards. So let them do it.
Mhm.
But those are kind of your 4 groups. Yeah, and then of those groups, we then basically have plans to go from the top down. So it's the schools that the hardest, most difficult schools we start with, and we work from there. But not before. We then return to the UCs. So the rest of November is when we go back to the UC application. And this is where you might be asking, I'm not applying to the UCs. Well, first of all, you should just go do the UC version anyways if you want to follow my
Yes.
strategy. You could in theory instead do MIT or Texas or other state schools with straightforward questions. I tried that. No, I just make all my students do the UC application. Sorry, like I don't care if
Yeah.
you want to apply or not. And every year there's 2 or 3 kids that don't want to apply to the UCs. They live in Michigan or whatever. Sorry, I don't know. And I always ask, are you willing to? And they go, yeah. And then we do it. So I don't know. Like
Mhm.
that is my strategy. All our students do the UCs, they do Michigan, and whether they submit them or not is up to them. But that's basically, if you want to follow my strategy, just go do it. I don't care if you're applying or not, because if you're not applying, you can pretty much skip this step. Just like you don't have to go back to the UCs. Just like the work was in service of the personal statement and the Common App, anyways. However, a lot of students we work with really do care. In which case, we go back and there are generally three. They have their 4 essays in theory. There's generally 3 options for each essay. The first is that we like it, like this essay was and still is a winner. In that case, we clean it up, we edit it for polish, and then cut it down to word count, basically finalize it. The most common option is that we like the topic and some stuff in the essay, but there's another version that we then did for the personal statement or for a supplement that we think is a stronger take or stronger writing about it.
Mhm.
In that case, I generally have the students kind of make a Franken essay where I tell them to go put together whatever pieces from each essay they like kind of into one,
Oh,
or we
okay.
just copy over like the Stanford 250 we like better and have them add 100 words to it. Then
Mhm.
we edit that and get that to work out and send that. Then there's a third option that we either just like don't like a topic, or there's a new topic that we came up with in usually a school supplement that we like better. In which case we bring that over and then make the essay about it and just kind of drop whatever fourth UC topic we had. Those are the 3 general strategies. I would say usually it's 25%, 50%, 25%. Like there'll be one that we just like, 2 that we kinda make a new version of, and 1 that we just replace with a new topic.
Okay.
Or there's a fourth option where we need a new topic entirely. That is most common when a student is trying to apply different majors to different schools, quite honestly. That's the most common way
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens. And if so, we just do it. We crank it out. That is usually pretty chill. That gets us then to like the end of November or early December, depending on how much time you want to spend on these. But that is December is the rest of school supplements. And this might seem kind of
Yes.
crazy. This is the part where like families think I'm a madman. But the deal is like, yeah, like this is how I applied to 20 schools. Like we made it to the finish line. We rush all of it in December. Um, So yeah, go in order of how much you want to get into the said school. Like that should be the order of your application list, and that
Yeah.
will almost always mirror the difficulty of the schools. And yes, Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton are much harder applications, more words, more they want than easier schools down the list. It goes in that order, and that's for the best because you just want to be putting your best effort and the most energy into the hardest schools and creating as much content as possible. I say goal is to have 4 to 5 complete applications finished by December 15th. So that is usually 5. That's we already applied,
Okay.
and by complete I mean like completed schools they care about. So like UVA doesn't count, like it's
Yeah.
we finished one application for the early deadline. That was the early school, but then we also and they'll be hard. We also complete Stanford, Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown. Yeah, we have those 5 schools. Supplements 100% ready to go by December 15th. This is like on track
Mhm.
because on December 15th, a lot of things happen. That's when early schools report back. So if a student gets an early decision, they're done. If they get in restricted early action,
Yes.
they're kind of done, depending on how much they want to do. And if they don't get in, well, now we need to work. It
Yeah.
also is usually right around the time winter break begins for students, which means they suddenly don't have school for 2 weeks. And it's also the timeline where I go, okay, so like it's the last 2 weeks of the year, Maddie, time to work really, really hard. Then you don't have to
Oh,
work anymore for
yes.
then it's just the podcast for 6 months. Yeah, so like yeah, but I'm not lying here. Like a lot of this process is still me leaving everything to the end, but I like it works. Like I don't know.
It works.
I will say I tend like so it's most students who don't get into early school. I will generally meet them somewhere between 5 and 7 times in the final 2 weeks, and they'll probably meet with you like 2 to 4 times, something like
At
that.
least, yeah.
Yeah, so it's and for reference, they usually meet like 1 to 2 times with me a week, and over 2 weeks they'll usually meet me 3 times and you once. Yeah, so it's more it's like a little more than double that. Yeah, in order to
Mhm.
complete 15 more schools, I said this sounds both insane and impossible, but I promise it's mostly boring and stressful. Like that,
That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, I would say boring and stressful. It's more boring than it is stressful, but it's boring and stressful. Key is it's winter break, go time, so you have all
Mhm.
day, and that is really how I feel. If this sounds all too scary for you, move the timeline up so you have more like 10 schools completely ready to submit by December 15th. That will absolutely make this not that scary. If you can get to 10 schools ready by December 15th, 10 real schools, that because that's really the key is I will get to, this is why I couldn't just write about Planet 20 schools. You see how complicated this is.
That's yeah.
The second 5 schools you do will be notably significantly easier than the first 5 in a way that it's because you're reusing content over and over and over again. And the final 10, usually in the final 10 schools we apply to, I would guess there's an average probably one additional essay we end up having to figure out. Like one school will have a single supplement over 100 words that we have to
Mhm.
be like, wait, we have nothing for this. It's like, yeah, like talk about a summer vacation that you met a man. Like, what did he say to you? So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's like that specific. Yeah, it's just like, or it'll be liberal arts college is like analyze this poem. Even that will reuse stuff. It's like, okay, there's a flower
Yeah.
here. We wrote about a garden you have like 6 weeks ago. So we'll crank that out. Goal is to have yeah, but that is the key. Is you just it's bureaucratic, I guess, is the mindset. Is the time for like ideas and brilliance and is over. It is just grindstone. Get this work done and keep repeating what you need to and grinding new research and replace and mad
Yeah.
living. Like it's just very formulaic, and it does get easier as your content amount increases or you have it, and also the schools get easier and you care less. And quite honestly, that's okay. Like the quality of
Yeah.
the work. The 17th school you apply to probably won't be quite as shiny as the second. Like I don't know what to tell
Mhm.
you, and I don't know that's not the flaw with my strategy. That's how anything works. If like the 17th time you do it, so I don't worry too much about it. Goal is to have the entire application, all schools, 100% completed by around. Well, usually, honestly, it's 5 p.m. on the Saturday before New Year's because that's when there's a football game starting, and usually it's the Cowboys game, and yeah, this year I believe it's December 5th on it's 5 p.m. PST on December either 28th or 29th this year for me because that's when the football game starts. And the key is that I want to be done with this process by New Year's Eve. Like done, 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 done,
Yeah.
done. No more work for me in January. And I do that because this process actually extends into the middle of January. Schools always give delays,
Oh,
and like
yeah.
Duke in particular, I am proud of the fact that I don't know anything about that. I don't know when schools are actually due because to me every school is due on just like basically January 1st or it's due
Mhm.
it's due New Year's Eve, which is not which I need to do that because and I think students would really take the same advice because that will put you in the right mindset. You have 2 weeks. You're on winter break. I don't.
Yeah.
Christmas is not a fun time in the Culkin household. I don't know how it's for you. Like I get Christmas off and then I work the day before and after. Like I don't know. Like those 2 weeks, I understand. I know what that is. I know how to get it done, and then I get it done with students by doing whatever I need to do, and then it's done, and then I'm done working. I highly recommend students have a similar mindset because I do that because I will fail. My body will fail me if I go into January and keep working. Like that is
Mhm.
so I stay sane by saying by having this hard deadline. Yeah, and then that gets New Year's. So if done the same way we do it, like I'm sure students are finishing up some of their own work in January. I don't really care. Like I'm off on that point. We've done all the hard work. That's me when they're finishing a lot more their smaller schools that are less important. That basically gets us to the year. And then there's, I guess, there's an epilogue where not much happens until you've heard schools. We've done an episode about like hearing back from schools. Then in the middle of April, there is like LOCIs, which I did recently, and now we're waiting on waitlist stuff. But
Mhm.
that is the general timeline. You can see how I start getting. This is the last time we talked about timelines, I started getting kind of nervy and stressed out while talking about it, and it's the same deal. That is the whole strategy. Like that is what I will actually do with students. What comes next is next episode I plan to do. We will return to, I guess, the end of junior year to August 1st. University of California PIQ responses. Like that's the next topic I want to do because that is the first step with actual students. I will go in depth on pretty much everything about it. I'm going to break down what I'm actually doing with students and why.
Yeah.
Yeah, if this episode interested students, I encourage them to either keep along or jump forward to that one because this is a process that very much goes in a certain order, and it will basically every step heavily influences and enables the step afterwards. Which is why the current step of chill out, maybe your SAT is done, is why it's so purposely chill because it gets extremely not chill in
That's true.
about 6 weeks for us. Doesn't that sound fun?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. We will talk again next time. Right?
All right. See you next time.
I am now taking on students for the 2025-26 college admission season. If you are a current junior who's looking for help specifically with their college application and essays, you should check out my website. It's collegewithmattie.com, and there you can see my services, my blog with other written posts, as well as book out a free consultation where you get a chance to chat with me and see how I might be able to help. Looking forward to meeting with you.